Origin Chess from CGBX, and this is America's Rapid Dragon Missile goes hard by the channel Task and Purpose. Yeah, it's Rapid Dragon system. I saw the Federation video on it like few months ago. It's literally payload dropping and it's like from this kind of like a cargo attachment thing, right? From that it just like releases multiple missiles, and I guess it just goes a long distance or something. It's basically something like a C-130, whatever the cargo plane, right? Basically just drops the payload, walks away, and just like goes big ass distance to attack multiple targets because it's like collection of like cluster of missiles, right? That is way too OP, right? Somebody just sit down and thought like, wait a minute, we have a range. All we need to do is drop a payload somewhere. Okay, we're gonna, let's say if we're gonna attack something like some place, right? And just like few 100 miles away, we just drop this from a cargo plane. And what if they all just reach their targets, like cluster attack like that, right? In Fallout 4 you have a fat boy, right? The missile launcher, there's a MIRV mod to it. You just throw it like cluster of things drop, something similar to that, I'm guessing, right? So yeah, that was awesome, right? So I'm guessing Task and Purpose was going to go in detail about that 17-minute video. This is going to be really interesting, all the details about it. What is it becoming like more relevant now or something? He's making video now or something, I don't know. United States Air Force new Rapid Dragon missile fires 45 missiles from a pallet, C-130 or C-17. Okay, so C-130 basically, right? That's the most used or something, the cargo plane. That's also can convert into AC-130, that attack plane, the flying fortress or whatever that is. So yeah, let's do this one. Remember, flag my Rickson, don't forget to subscribe so that way I know which type of videos to react to more. Check out the Rick Sunday, this link is on. Check out the end card, and let's do it.
Whoever came up with the idea for the Rapid Dragon missile system is mentally ill in the best way possible. It's a pallet of cruise missiles hurled out the back of a C-130 cargo plane that then launch up to 9 separate AGM-158 missiles at once, each able to hit a different target up to 1,200 miles away, or completely atomize a single point if you skip the lesson on preventing target overkill. How was it developed? What tactical situation would it be best used in? And what are some of the challenges that this system faces? And why does this idea make me want to hooah all over the place? The idea of weaponizing seemingly innocent old cargo planes has been around since the Vietnam War, when C-130s were used to yeet giant 15,000-pound Blue 82 bombs right out the back. These were used to flatten a section of forest to make it safe for a helicopter to land. The problem was, you had to get close as heck to the enemy to drop it, so a lot of them were shot down in the process. Now, to fix that problem, in the 1980s, when it looked like the B-1 bomber might get cancelled, they came up with the Cruise Missile Carrier aircraft, which was basically a 747 that you would fly to visit your family in, except they reconfigured it, modified it, to fire 50 to 100 AGM-86 3,000-pound cruise missiles. The aircraft was faster and flew higher, so it was safer from enemy fire. Similar to the Rapid Dragon missiles, they were released from the back of the aircraft from a rotary launcher.
Hold up there. So is C-130 just 747? Because I know 747 is like jumbo jet, right? Like your usual one, what is it, like 737 or was it 757, like the smaller one? But 747 is like big, right? Yeah, and I'm pretty sure like 777 or 787 are also big. So 747 is like big jumbo jet, like international flight or something. Your usual one is like either 737 or 757. I forgot that. So 747 is big, so they just like turn that into cargo, no?
That ejected them right out the tail. The idea was never executed though because everyone had sobered up by the 1990s. Then in 1996, the National Air Intelligence Center created a program called Altair, which demonstrated for the first time an air-launched drag-chute-based missile system could work from a cargo plane. But I think this is where they missed a huge opportunity for a 1988 Con Air sequel about prisoners being transported with a missile in a cargo plane called Altair Con Air Back in the Cage. It'd be another decade in the year 2003 before the concept would be revisited by none other than
Seriously, man, why are those like iconic movies which doesn't have much story, but because of like how around the time it was launched and like the stars that are in action movies, it's like something like Con Air. Why are those no sequels like that? Like in today's world, people play safe a lot. Sequels are like thing now. They're not doing that. They could just make like Con Air 2. I don't know, reaction to taxation or something. There you go.
insane graduate students in their 101 preliminary concept studies at the Air Force Institute of Technology. This is what happens when you give Air Force students too much free time in safe spaces. They dream up apocalyptic weapons. Before we get into that, I want to talk about this video's sponsor, MyHeritage, the leading global service for family history research and DNA testing. They have over 20 billion historical records and documents, and they can find documents for your relatives automatically. Using advanced AI technology, MyHeritage allows you to repair, colorize, and even animate historical photos. And with tools like instant discoveries and record matches, you can easily find ancestors' historical records and add an entire branch of relatives to your family tree in one click of a button. Let me show you how easy it is to build your family tree. Here, I can add a family member, and when you zoom out, you can see us going back in time to see great-grandparents and their relatives going back generations.
Hold on, isn't that a problem? Like privacy problem? Like I get about you, like you can't find out about you, but your relatives, you're finding things about them as well. Like relatives you didn't know had, now you're finding about them as well. So like you found out about it yourself, but you've also found out about your relatives. When they're like, okay, breach your privacy, man. What the hell? I didn't want to know that type of way. I don't know. But yeah. Well, go to original video page link and from there support this channel or like the QR code or whatever that is on the screen.
Heritage has to offer using the link below or scanning the QR code. One student, Ari Gerler, who was studying here from the Turkish Air Force, wrote his 100-page thesis paper on the idea. I went ahead and pulled it up. He imagined weaponizing cargo planes, but this time with a pallet box crammed full of cruise missiles. Unlike the 1980s concept, you wouldn't have to do a ton of remodifications that are expensive, costly, and require training. I've put a link in the description if you want to read it. But the thrust of his argument is that since the 1980s, cruise missiles have become more commonplace with greater long-range capabilities. During the first few days of a hypothetical war, the Air Force has a major problem to contend with. They have far more targets that they need to destroy than they have fighters and bombers, which requires a lot of separate sorties. But if each cargo plane could drop 45 missiles in 5 separate pallet boxes from a safe distance, that greatly increases the speed at which an air campaign can be completed. That might make war sound like a numbers game, but in this case it kind of is. However, the idea was quickly forgotten about yet again, because remember, this was back in 2003, and everyone was like, I don't think we need to fire 45 cruise missiles that cost $1.5 million each at a guy with an AK-47. Or do we? No, we don't. Fast forward yet another decade, and the idea got dusted off and picked up off the shelf once again in
I'm pretty sure like military heads like, yeah, we need to do this. Like we can kill people with basic missiles. But with this kind of missiles, we can kill that even more extra kill. There you go. That basically Unreal Tournament thing, right? Double kill, multi-kill, ultra kill. There you go.
2015, once the military realized near-peer warfare might be back on the menu. In 2015, this RAND publication resurrected the unholy idea when they advocated improving standoff bombing in a cheap way by using cargo planes yet again. But still, the program had not yet been officially picked up by the United States Air Force as a weapons program to finally turn from a fever dream into a reality. Airdrops of supplies have been commonplace since World War II. But where the Rapid Dragon system takes a hard left turn is that its parachute is rigged in such a way so that the missile cargo in the pallet box is oriented nose down. The way it works is that when each missile is released in sequence, it falls out of a barrel-like chamber or cell. As it does this, the wings unfold along with its tail. Then the engine on the missile is ignited, which generates thrust, so it can maneuver to the designated target. The AGM-158 JASSM extended range that it drops is a huge, stealthy, long-range missile that weighs about 2,200 pounds total, with a 1,000-pound armor-piercing warhead on it, and those guys working in logistics thought they weren't going to have to stack bodies like the rest of us. The way I like to explain
Hold up there, just one missile is like a metric ton? That's insane. So, 45 missiles, like, that's like 45 tons in just like one parachute holding that much. Like, did they create like some kind of specialized parachute for that, right? 45 tons, right? I mean, they're like, dropping from such high, I guess they don't have to worry about, I don't know. To me, it felt like they need to create some kind of like special parachute for that to slow it down, right? I don't know.
Rapid Dragon missile system is that, you know how a burrito is the delivery vehicle for the cheese, meat, beans, right? In this case, the Rapid Dragon is the burrito for the missiles. It took yet another 4 whole years before the Air Force would pick up the concept for development. In 2019, they officially began work on the Rapid Dragon program. Why'd they name it that? The name comes from an over 1,000-year-old siege weapon from China called the Jilongqi, or the Rapid Dragon Cart. These were basically a combination of giant crossbows and catapults.
Oh my god, that is some next level shit. If conflict with China does happen, they use Rapid Dragon, like that would be something on the nose, right? Chinese would be like, you used our names for your weapon to attack us? That's some next level shit.
Which after being fired would launch a dozen giant crossbolts into enemy defenses, saturating them with fire. A quote from the Air Force Research Laboratory on the naming convention states, quote, "Today, the Rapid Dragon concept is changing the game again, this time as an airborne delivery system for US Air Force weapons. And, like its namesake, these palletized munitions promise to unleash mighty salvos en masse on distant adversaries." It'd be kind of like if China called their new gun the Browning QBZ-191. Rapid Dragon came out of the Air Force's Strategic Development Planning and Experimentation Office. They're like the Mythbusters, but for the Air Force. They go out and experiment on crazy ideas to see if they actually work. The reason they were excited about this specific idea in 2019 is because it's when the US military got concerned with being outnumbered in the Pacific. Currently, there are 300 C-130s being flown by the United States. That number is soon to be reduced to 255. These are the classic 4-engine prop planes that have been in service since 1956. They carry 2 pallets that contain 6 missiles each. I flew in one of these to Puerto Rico for a training mission, and it is a rough, slow ride. There are 222 of the C-17 Globemaster IIIs, which are a bigger, more capable jet-powered brother that's been in service since 1993. They can carry a total of 5 pallet boxes, each with 9 missiles, giving you a total of 45 individual AGM-158s. Still not anywhere close to what you can carry in Ace Combat, but it's a start. And there are 94 of the incomprehensibly large C-5 Galaxy planes. These numbers add up to a total 731 potential bombers. There are important considerations here though. Ari's paper from 2003 pointed to a problem that still exists today. America's cargo planes are already heavily taxed. Adding a new mission on top of the already existing one.
I mean, I understand, but the whole point here is that you don't have to worry about a role of something, multi-role things. Multi-role is where US has been pushing, and it kind of makes sense. Like, immediately you don't want to be in a position where to think about like how many cargo planes we have, how many bombers we have. Wait a minute, we don't have that much bombers, so what we do now? Should we like make cargo bombs into bombers? That will take time. This way is like cargo plane is a cargo bomber now, right, with the Rapid Dragon. So multi-role and ease of access is where US has been pushing, which world will follow. Obviously it just makes sense.
Would be difficult. Imagine if you were doing a job and your boss came up and said, "Hey Carl, I noticed you're doing a stellar job. How about you do this new job on top of that? Also, is it cool if I come by on Tuesday and f your wife?" General Ovos, commander of the US Transportation Command.
That must happen a lot, right? Like, oh, you're a stellar employee, stellar. You're just like employee of the month. By the way, since you're just such a good employee, you should do this extra task, like, yeah, you'll get a ribbon or something. There you go, like a good job pin or something. There you go. Will I get more money? No, that's not how jobs work.
And said to the Senate Armed Services Committee in 2023, the Air Force's largest airlift fleet, the C-130 force, has lost almost 50% of its capacity, from a high of well over 500 aircraft in Operation Desert Storm to the current program levels. So the C-130 were the planes most likely to fulfill the Rapid Dragon mission in the first place. However, other reports like the 2016 Mobility Capability Study found that the Air Force can carry 35.9 million ton-miles per day, and they estimated even in surge capacity, they would only need 32 million tons per day. There's no doubt the United States Air Force has incredible airlift, but this is still an important factor to consider with this strategy. You have to decide whether or not you want to sacrifice transportation space for missiles during the opening of a war, a critical period of time when you need to move troops and equipment at peak rate. If you ask Ask me personally, I could go without an extra pallet of MREs if it meant more missiles dropped on the enemy, but don't ask me to choose between cheese tortellini and Rapid Dragon pellets. The tactical purpose would be to address the main US military concern, which is that their adversaries have invested heavily in A2AD systems like your long-range missiles that prevent them from closing with and destroying the enemy. The Rapid Dragon would overwhelm air defense nodes with multiple attacks at once. The first and second missile might get intercepted, but the third...
That is the most powerful thing you can do, right? Like, people have this like anti-missile defenses and all the anti-defenses, but people fail to realize that those anti-defenses like limited, like how much they can counter, right? And even their accuracy can be limited. With the recent conflict in Middle East, right? That's what happened with the Iron Dome and everything. It got overwhelmed, right? So things like Rapid Dragon could easily overwhelm, like American, if they're like as a fighting type, fighting against China for Taiwan, they could easily overwhelm like Chinese anti-defense things and things like that. If you have that much things, each plane can fire 60 missiles like that. And you have like, I don't know, like 50, 100 plane. That would be insanely overwhelming.
Third and fourth have a pretty good chance of taking out that expensive air radar system. The United States and her allies have an unmatched air logistics network, with hundreds of airstrips and cargo aircrafts across the world. And so this concept plays to the United States and their allies' strengths. We also have to take into account that the B-52 and B-1 bomber require twice the runway as a cargo plane. Lieutenant General Jim Selfie, commander of the Air Force Special Operations Command, put it this way: it's not hard to figure out where a 10,000-foot concrete runway in the Pacific is located. But when you're trying to figure out where 3,000 feet stretches of road and grass strips are, that's a different targeting problem for your adversaries. If I put on my strategic...
Look, man, one thing I realized about the bomber thing, right? Like, yeah, B-1, B-50, B-1, and yeah, they require longer runways compared to cargo planes. But what I realized, like, something like F-35 can use like nuclear bombs. Like, now they're fitted with that, like they can equip that, or something like mother of all bombs type of way, right? The big ass bombs. And F-35B, things like that, I'm guessing can just like take off from hovering or something. It doesn't even need a runway, and they are like stealthy, properly stealthy enough to be stealthy, like before anybody knows it, like they already dropped the bomb. That makes them F-35 insanely lethal, right? Like one of a kind type of lethal. Like, if everything goes down, like just like back against the wall level of shit, they could literally launch a small nuclear warhead to like devastate a lot of places just by using F-35s. That's insane. You don't need to worry about anything like runways, things like that. Just one aircraft carrier or something, just like, not even aircraft carrier, something like Tuscan. No, wait a minute, who was that? Not what you think. Showed, what was that, like amphibious vehicle, something that has something like helicopter pad or something. F-35Bs can be like launched from there.
Thinking cap real quick, it lets any foreign military ally who already has commonplace cargo planes adapt to act as a weapon. This complicates the enemy's attempt to destroy your bombers because they can't write off a C-130 as a non-threat like they normally would. This forces them to expend more missiles. It might not look like it, but flying cargo is dangerous as heck. If any of the cargo or pallet or equipment in the back becomes unfixed during flight and moves around, it can and has caused planes to crash in the past. From Ari's Air Force thesis paper, the cargo has to stay fixed in flight because of the center of gravity considerations, except during airdrop. So dropping mixed cargo of missiles while transporting equipment is something that someone will have to do mission planning for. I'm picturing an O2 Air Force officer watching this, just dreading having to come up with mission plans for a Rapid Dragon over South China Sea in 2032. By 2021, the Rapid Dragon was ready to be test-fired for the first time. They took off from an Air Force base in Florida and successfully test-fired it in New Mexico, completely destroying a target with precision missiles. The standoff distance of over 1,000 miles allows the slow-moving cargo plane to safely stay out of range of incoming fire. In 2022, the Rapid Dragon was then successfully test-fired again, this time in the European theater, and the following year in July 2023, it was successfully test-fired in the Pacific just outside of Chinese-held waters. Only a month later, Japan began the work of preparing their 13 C-2 transport jets to accommodate the Rapid Dragon system as they continue their military modernization efforts.
Kawasaki makes plane. Where'd that come from? I didn't even know that. Okay, I guess.
What did the targeting is interesting. The fact that the JASSM cruise missiles have such a massive range actually poses a problem guiding the round to the target. This is usually done with the aircraft itself on onboard sensors. This won't work with the Rapid Dragon though. Firstly, because the C-130s and C-17s lack that kind of hardware, and secondly, even if they did, the targets in question would be too far away for them to track themselves. There are a few ways to handle this. During testing, the targeting data was fed to the munition while the C-130 was in mid-flight. The data is sent to the Rapid Dragon pallet, which then acts as a node and feeds the information to the missiles themselves. The munitions primarily operate off of GPS and inertial navigation units. The INUs keep track of where it's traveled based off of the physical movement through space. You know that one meme, the missile knows where it is?
The missile knows where it is at all times, and arriving at a position where it wasn't, it now is.
Yeah, it's like that but in real life. It does this to counter any GPS jamming between it and the target. Once all targeting info is uploaded and the aircraft is in range, the Rapid Dragon's parachute system deploys, yanking the entire payload out the back. The pallet senses the entire package has stabilized in air and releases the missiles. After they're released, their engine systems ignite, and after getting a bit of airspeed, they level out and ascend to the cruise altitude. And then they proceed to do bad things to bad people. But this is when we need to address the potential challenges with this program. We've yet to see the system go into mass production yet. That doesn't mean that it couldn't be quickly fielded if it needed to be. It is possible indication, though, that there's more work to be done, or that the Air Force thinks that the missiles can be used to greater effect elsewhere. Have you ever reached for an extra JASSM missile and found there were none left? That's the worst feeling. But it's also a challenge we need to consider. My understanding is that the US Air Force 2022 budget requested about $711 million for 525 of the JASSM-ER missiles. That would be the highest yearly production level possible. And I'm guessing that the priority for those are not going to be for a large-scale pallet weapon system just yet. The United States actually has a pretty massive stockpile of cruise missiles. They have a total of 7,500.
Yeah, I mean, if you're gonna use it like that, you need a big ass stockpile of. Otherwise, like you wouldn't consider doing that, right? Like, these are sophisticated missile. Let's use it one by one like we normally use, rather than like throw it into cargo planes and like shooting like 50 at a time type of way. This is mostly like if like all out war breaks out type of way, like special military operation level of shit where you just like instantly trying to destroy things. That's when this comes into play.
500 JASSM missiles produced so far, which means they could definitely spare a couple for this strategy if it was deemed feasible. I might not have gotten a high enough ASVAB score to get into the Air Force, but I do have the calculator app on my phone, and that thing is telling me that the C-17 fully loaded with cruise missiles would cost about $67.5 million. As staggering as that sounds, building the cheapest US bomber, the B-52, cost $94 million just to manufacture. According to a C-130J pilot,
I mean, in military terms, like those are not that much of a number. I mean, come on, like some sophisticated jet or something is like much costlier than that. Just imagine stealth bombers; they're like in billions.
That we spoke to about the program, with the increases in purchases of large quantities of JASSM-R missiles, especially to countries with smaller defense budgets, Lockheed Martin will need to negotiate pricing, which will then benefit from economies of scale and will only increase their proliferation. Both Finland and Poland have recently purchased hundreds of these missiles, and both operate cargo aircraft capable of accommodating the Rapid Dragon system. The ability for this system to shift the balance of power in the favor.
Yeah, so special military operation. What that did is like panic countries around it, like Finland and something. So they would like equip advanced American missiles and American equipment. There you go.
The United States and its allies have caught the attention of both China and Russia. In fact, it's this proliferation that has some groups alarmed, like the Bulletin of Atomic Scientists, who closely monitor and report on anything related to nuclear warfare. According to them, the Rapid Dragon is almost too easy a system to use, especially if it's upgraded or modified to carry something like the AGM-86B air-launched cruise missile, which can carry a 150 kiloton nuclear warhead. I have to say, it's not.
I mean, look, man, that is such a true statement, right? With the, like the current war where people are saying like main battle tanks are the things of the past. Why? Because something like cheap Amazon-style drones are much easier to acquire. Technology is so overpowering that any physical thing that we do is not enough. Like technology is overpowering that, right? Basic drones are too much for massive battle tanks. So imagine that like a higher scale like this missiles and rapid dragon technology. That's just overpowering. Somebody decides to throw 50 nukes at some place like that Fallout intro or something. Everybody's fucked. You can't have anti-defense against that one. So yeah, that is true. Like this technology is too overpowering.
Not just Hollywood rebooting old ideas, because remember when I said earlier that the cruise missile carrier program from the 1980s was never followed through on? The day I went to publish this, I heard news of a Boeing announcement. They're now working on a new rotary missile launcher for the C-17 that would fire up to 12 hypersonic missiles from 2 separate drums. A resurrection and improvement of the old idea. But this one will have an advanced electromagnetic catapult launch system and software that can communicate with the missile to the target. As tensions rise in Europe and the Asia Pacific, talks of nuclear warfare have reared their head again, and it could just be a matter of time before the humble C-130 becomes a flying apocalypse carrier. For now though, the Rapid Dragon is still going through.
That's not just some weapon. If that happens, we're all fucked. Even if the place sees that doesn't get bombed, we'll still be screwed because everybody depends on each other, right? What was that like simple? There was I don't know what happened, but stock market was down in London for whatever reason a few years ago or something, right? Entire global economy dropped a bit and everybody felt the effect just because of some technical bullshit in London. Everybody's depending on each other, right? So any type of nuclear activity, we are all fucked.
Testing. It's currently in phase 4 according to a recent Air Force publication that validates the ability for live munitions to effectively hit their target at range. As of 2022, it's been in the low production rates, but numbers of Rapid Dragon systems are only expected to go up. Hopefully the students at the US Army War College are already working on thesis papers on how to turn logistics trucks into missiles now. I'm your average infantryman, Chris Cappy. If you found anything in the video,
yeah, imagine that college guy basically saying that suddenly there are like black SUVs and like suits just sitting there with certain people with green suits and like medals there. We need to talk to you. Like, what the fuck? There you go. Yeah, people with, like free mind and innovative mind in colleges. Yeah, they're like, they're gonna bring the end of the world apparently. I bet there's butterfly effect, right? There'll be one guy who comes up with certain technology in college or something, and that's it. That will result in some kind of end of the world. There you go. Much worse than something nuke or something, right? Imagine people figure out like much worse weapons than nukes. Like, I know this like too far-fetched or something like black hole bombs and shit like that. Like people suddenly realize we need to invest in like particle accelerators. There you go. And that's the next phase. Like how to end the world basically. That's insanity. Well, that was America's Rapid Dragon missile goes hard by channel Task and Purpose. If you like my don't forget to subscribe. If you haven't seen the Fat Tuition video I did about Rapid Dragon, check out the link in the description or at the end card or whatever. Yeah, I'll see you next time.